There is a table you should have never taken a seat at, not because the food was poor or because the conversation was awkward, but because the person sitting across from you was slowly transferring something into your life that you never invited and never even noticed. The Bible speaks about the act of eating and drinking with others far more seriously than most of us have ever been taught, because in the Scriptures, sharing a meal is never just about the food. It is a covenant act. It is a spiritual agreement. It is an invitation that says, I receive you. I open my life to your influence. What you carry, I am willing to carry as well. And God, who designed that covenant, gave very specific warnings about who should and who should never sit at your table. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 11 is one of the most overlooked commands in the entire New Testament. The Apostle Paul writes, "But now I am writing to you that you must not associate with anyone who claims to be a brother or sister, but is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater or slanderer, a drunkard or swindler. Do not even eat with such a person." He does not say be careful around them. He does not say pray for them from a distance. He says do not eat with them. In the ancient world and throughout the Scriptures, sharing a meal was one of the most intimate acts of community. It represented trust. It represented access. It meant your life was open to theirs. That is why Jesus eating with sinners was so radical. That is why Judas betraying Jesus at the Passover table was so devastating. That is why God's warnings about your table companions are so serious. Who you eat with is a reflection of who you are becoming. The first person God warns you never to share a table with is not an unbeliever. It is someone who calls themselves a Christian but has made permanent peace with open sin. I need you to hear this carefully because many churches have confused this completely. God does not call you to separate yourself from those who do not believe. Jesus himself ate with tax collectors and sinners. He went to their homes. He broke bread with them. That was never the problem. The problem Paul addresses in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 is someone who claims the name of Christ while living in open, unrepentant, ongoing sin, and who feels no conviction, no shame, and no desire to change. I remember sitting at a dinner table with a man who led worship at his church every Sunday. He was gifted. His voice was extraordinary. But privately, and it was not very private at all, he was living in a lifestyle of consistent deception and sexual sin that he had no intention of leaving. And the people around that table, myself included, laughed at his jokes, shared our lives with him, and went home, never asking the question God was quietly asking us. Why are you eating with someone whose choices you are now covering with your presence? There is a principle woven all through the Scriptures. Proximity is endorsement. When you regularly share a table with someone, you are telling the spiritual world and the people watching your life that what that person represents is acceptable to you. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Notice it does not say listen to fools or agree with fools. It says walk with them, be a companion to them, sit at their table, and you will suffer harm. Today, I want to show you something that most pastors will never preach about on a Sunday morning. We are going to walk through 4 types of people God warns you never to eat or drink with, and why choosing the wrong table can cost you far more than just a meal. You are not called to judge this person. You are not called to condemn them or cut them off from God's grace, but you are not required to give them a seat at the most intimate level of your life while they remain unchanged and unchallenged. Love them, pray for them, but guard your table. The second person God warns you to guard your table from is the one whose words toward you are always sweet and never true. Flattery is one of the most spiritually dangerous forces in the life of a believer because it feels exactly like genuine love. It feels like encouragement. It feels like support. But flattery is not about you. Flattery is always about what the flatterer needs from you. I once had someone in my life who was present at every meal, every gathering, and every significant moment, and they always had something extraordinary to say about me, about my gifts, my calling, and my potential. It was intoxicating, and for too long I did not ask the question I should have been asking. Why? Why is this person always building me up? What do they want? What are they getting from this access? The answer came later, and it was painful. Proverbs chapter 29 verse 5 says it plainly, Those who flatter their neighbors are spreading nets for their feet. A net, that is the image God uses for flattery. It looks like open ground, but beneath it is a trap. And by the time you feel it close around you, you have already given the flatterer access to your decisions, your resources, your time, and your spiritual direction. Psalm 55 verse 21 paints an even darker picture. His talk is smooth as butter, yet war is in his heart. His words are more soothing than oil, yet they are drawn swords. The person who flatters you at your table is not building you up. They are setting you up, and the meal you share with them is not fellowship. It is the transaction they need to complete before they use you. Before you welcome someone to your table consistently, ask yourself honestly, does this person also tell me hard truths? Does this person speak into my life when I am wrong? Is this person willing to risk the relationship to protect my soul? Or do they only ever tell me what I want to hear? If the answer is the latter, guard your table. If what you are hearing right now is making you look at certain relationships in a completely different light, brother or sister, you are not alone. Write in the comments section right now, Lord, show me who belongs at my table. That is a prayer, and God answers it. And if this channel has been feeding your spirit, please subscribe so we can keep growing together in biblical wisdom every single week. Now, let us keep going because the next two types are the ones the church almost never warns you about. The third type is described in one of the most haunting passages in all of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 23 verses 6 to 8 says, "Do not eat the bread of a stingy man. Do not desire his delicacies, for he is like one who is inwardly calculating. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. You will vomit up the morsels you have eaten and waste your pleasant words." Read that again. You will vomit up the morsels you have eaten. God is describing a spiritual reality through a physical image. There are people who sit across from you at a table, offer you food, offer you friendship, and offer you access, but their heart is not with you. They are calculating. Every meal is an investment they expect a return on. Every conversation is currency they are saving to spend later. I want to tell you about a season in my life when I sat at a table like this for almost 2 years. A man I respected deeply invited me into his inner circle. He was generous with his time, his resources, and his connections. He introduced me to people. He opened doors, and I believed, genuinely believed, that this was a God-appointed relationship. Then the asking started. Small things first, then larger things, and favors that quietly became obligations. And when I finally drew a boundary, when I said no to something that crossed a clear line, the entire relationship dissolved overnight. There was no investment in me. There was an investment in what I could produce for him, and I had been eating his bread, receiving his generosity, and building my life on a table that was built on sand. Jesus gave us a diagnostic for this in Luke chapter 14. He said, "When you host a dinner, do not invite those who can repay you." Why? Because the person who is always calculating repayment, whether they owe it or you owe it, is never truly present with you. There is always a ledger running beneath the surface of the meal. If you find yourself feeling exhausted, indebted, or slowly emptied every time you leave someone's table, that feeling is not ingratitude. That is your spirit trying to tell you something your mind has not admitted yet. The fourth type is one Paul addresses directly, and it may be the most relevant warning for the world we are living in right now. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 20 to 21 says, "No, but the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. And I do not want you to be participants with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons too. You cannot have a part in both the Lord's table and the table of demons." Now, I want to be very clear about what this means for us today, because Paul is not only speaking about ancient idol feasts, he is establishing a principle that reaches into every table we sit at, every gathering we attend, and every environment we repeatedly enter and allow to shape our spiritual lives. There are tables in our world today that are set in the name of community, in the name of progress, and in the name of inclusion. But the altar behind them belongs to something that is not God. And every time you sit at those tables consistently, you are not just eating food, you are participating in a spiritual covenant with what that table represents. I once attended a gathering, a regular dinner among a group of professional people that seemed harmless on the surface. But over time, I noticed what was being celebrated at that table, what was being honored, and what was being normalized in the laughter and the conversation and the stories that were shared. And I realized that what felt like fellowship was actually a slow, comfortable, well-fed compromise. The altar was not visible, but it was there. Exodus chapter 34, verse 15, gives a sobering Old Testament parallel. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. The invitation to the table always comes first. The spiritual contamination follows, and it comes not through argument or confrontation. It comes through comfort, through familiarity, and through the slow erosion of your sense that something is wrong. Not every dinner is a demon feast, but every dinner is a spiritual act, and the person who designed the table always has an agenda for what gets served there. Guard what tables you return to, because you will eventually become what those tables are feeding you. I want to say something important before we close. This message is not a call to isolation. It is not permission to become cold, suspicious, or closed off from the world. The table of Jesus was radical in its openness. He sat with broken people. He ate with rejected people. He went to the homes of people everyone else had written off. But Jesus was never confused about who he was at those tables. He was never reshaped by what was served. He was never slowly absorbed into the identity of the room. He brought the kingdom to the table. The table never redefined the kingdom for him. That is the model. Be present. Be open. Be loving. But know who you are. Know what your table represents. And know what God's word says about who deserves permanent, intimate, covenant access to your life at the deepest level. James chapter 4, verse 4 asks, "Do you not know that friendship with the world means enmity against God?" And Psalm chapter 1, verse 1 opens the entire book of Psalms with a table image. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. Sit. The blessed person is careful about where they sit, what table they choose, whose food they eat, whose voice fills the room while they eat it. Your table is sacred ground. Protect it the way God designed it to be protected. If this message has opened your eyes today, I want you to do one thing right now. Write in the comments section, "Lord, guard my table and guard my spirit." That is a declaration of discernment, and God honors every word of it. And if you know someone who is sitting at the wrong table right now, someone who cannot see what it is costing them, share this video with them today. It could be the word that finally pulls them away before the damage goes any deeper. Do not forget to subscribe to Bible Worship so we can keep growing together in biblical wisdom every single week. God bless you deeply, my brother and my sister. Until next time.